I speak like a loving father, but an angry father. There are certain things people must do for themselves or go out of business as a people. Hang it up. If you don't mean what you say about wanting to be free, stop telling the lie. I have a large family in the world, and I'm very glad to be in the world at this juncture in African history. Once I began to lose my sight, it was a supreme tragedy because I grew up in this state and I read books, mostly books from white people I worked for, who had good libraries they didn't use. So therefore, when I took the books home and they didn't miss them, I didn't bring them back. From an extremely poor family, I grew up with great culture around me, encyclopedias, and good dictionaries. I don't know why they had such good literature. They never seemed to read it, never seemed to read a newspaper, but I thank them anyway. What I wanted to say is something about eldership in Africa, eldership in the African world. But you've got to say something about eldership and its impact on you, eldership in your own family, eldership in your own surroundings. I've just finished my first big political book, and I have a last chapter that's ran in a newspaper in New York, Can African People Save Themselves? Where I take off the gloves and stop being kind and speak like a father. I speak like a loving father, but an angry father. There are certain things people must do for themselves or go out of business as a people. Hang it up. If you don't mean what you say about wanting to be free, stop telling the lie. If you're going to be free in the kind of political wind that's blowing in the world, you have to sustain yourself. You might have to take some steps backward in order to take some steps forward. You might have to look back and realize that you have killed off a lot of messengers because you couldn't understand the nature of the message because the message made you responsible. You might not have thought out the fact that Booker T. Washington, W.E.B. Du Bois, Marcus Garvey, Elijah Muhammad, and Malcolm X was all saying the same thing using different words. And there's no debate about which one was right because all of them were right. Talking about self-reliance. But before talking about eldership, I got to look at eldership in my own family because I grew up in a family where eldership was a very respected thing. And my great-grandmother was the Supreme Court. And when things had to be talked over, and she listened and finally handed down her decision, if there was a grumble against the decision, she would stand and tap her cane on the floor. The decision was beyond dispute. And that was the end of it. And that old lady held our family together all the days of her life, dying at 108 years old. She told me many fantastic stories about growing up. She grew up here in Georgia before she joined the other part of the family in Alabama. She was sold to a plantation in Georgia, and she was so ornery. They took her back and sold her back to this same plantation where they bought her. She was in Georgia when Sherman was burning down Atlanta, and she swore she saw him. Eyes redder than a coon, meanest man she ever saw. What he burning that city for? My main point is that what has influenced my life happened to be 3 elders, all women. And when my grandmother would say, after the death of my mother, when she wanted to say that I was a strong person, I had great potential, she said, that's a good boy, has a little of the girl in him, like his mother Ella. That if you are part woman, you have strength. You've got the combination of both. That wouldn't be understood today, where there's so many mixed signals about manhood. But those first 2 deities were both gone by the time I reached 5th grade and encountered a teacher, Evelina Taylor, the most remarkable teacher I've ever seen in all my life, one who had the greatest influence on my life. She would demonstrate her lessons. She was bug on penmanship and spelling. She was good on drilling. She was good on grammar. And she would put a sentence on the board and put a line on there and say, word, that's an adverb, Miss Taylor. That's a noun, Miss Taylor. We left her, we knew the parts of speech. We could sing it and wake us up in the middle of the night, and we knew it. And she would stagger in front of a classroom once or twice a day. When you see a man walking down the street this way, what would you think? That's a drunkard, Miss Taylor. Same day, same demonstration. We concluded that Miss Taylor was married to a drunkard who deserted her. We never thought Miss Taylor was ever a baby. We never thought Miss Taylor was ever a teenager. We thought Miss Taylor arrived in the world just the way she walked. But one thing she instilled in me, the love of the classroom. And once I entered teaching on a regular basis and became chairman of my department and head of several organizations, I knew what I wanted to do most, be a great classroom teacher. And when I can look out at the students I have taught through the years, the large number of doctors, technicians, 3 ambassadors, some heads of Black Studies programs. Only a few weeks ago, some students said that you don't believe in the European concept of heaven or hell. Where you gonna go when you die? I said, I ain't going no place. I'm gonna stay right here. The physical body of the man is going, but I've left enough minds behind and indoctrinated enough minds, they're gonna carry on. Teaching is a form of learning. And the one thing I had to learn that broke my heart at first, and yet when I accepted it, I became a much better teacher. All of my classes were oversubscribed for all the years I was at Hunter. The great teacher is in part an entertainer. If you can't get the message across interestingly, no matter how good the message is, it doesn't matter a great deal. You can't fix it in their minds. This might tell you why W.E.B. Du Bois, the greatest single intellect we produced in the whole Western world, could never have been a great mass leader. And his difference of opinion with Marcus Garvey could have been a touch of envy. This man came and did almost overnight what he secretly longed to do, to create a mass movement and lead that mass movement. It had nothing to do with which one was right and which one was wrong, because they were both right. Different opinions, different things.